So anybody who just entered, if you could just go onto your phones or computers and answer the question of what you would like to take out of this virtual lunch. And maybe now cover a second question. And that would be, what is your number one challenge related to diversity and inclusion in your organization? In your context, if you are an independent with your colleagues and suppliers and people you do business with. So for those who just came in, you go to menti.com, www.menti.com, and type 96099908. Lack of action, gender diversity, which probably is not enough, inclusive behaviors that are not coming up, intangibility. That's an interesting one, intangibility. Understanding, inclusive behaviors, make people care about it. That's definitely the topic we're going to cover today. Not enough funding, yes. Frontline workers buy-in, absolutely. Lack of understanding, lack of action, all speaking up. Maybe lack of promotion of diversity, lack of engagement, presuppositions, a need for more internal diversity. Those are indeed things that we are discussing with the thought leaders and the managers that we speak to on a regular basis. Continued efforts, absolutely. Great. So, as a means of introduction, I am introducing, we are four of us as a collective today, bringing you this virtual lunch. It's a combination of a think tank called Includers with Brigitte Serfontaine, John Metzler. Brigitte, can you say hi? So we see who you are.
Hi, so yeah, sorry, I was muted. Hi, everybody.
And John Metzler.
Hi, I'm in the minority today, I see.
And Leadership CQ with Amélie Devaux. Amélie.
Hello, everyone.
And myself. And collectively, we have backgrounds in finance, research and development, marketing, advertising, international senior positions dealing with very diverse teams, and a common passion for the richness and the potential of inclusion within organizations. And we wanted to have this open conversation with you in order to create, and possibly on a monthly basis, that will be at the end of the session, something that we will be asking you, but really to engage in some discussions on how to bring about the inclusion, the psychological safety that we are so passionate about in the workplace. A few words. We all came out of a very difficult period, and in the past 2 years, in the US, probably many more, but we've been hearing about diversity and inclusion a lot. Right from the beginning of confinement, George Floyd came out. Just before that, we had the Me Too movement. We had a lot of scandals, of media attached to a lot of diverse sets of individuals. And so there is a feeling that there is a sort of, we went from, I guess, from ignorance or blindness to a forced awareness. We were all on our computers and definitely heard a lot about it. And we are now entering a second phase, and this second phase is the one of really practical implementation. Of course, some organizations have started decades ago. That being said, particularly on the vast range of diversity, and this is going beyond gender equality to embrace gender orientation, sexual orientation, visible, invisible, and acquired differences such as neurodiversity, personality traits, social class, family status, etc., etc., etc. And this phase right now is one where we need to, to start making things move a bit. And there's a social pressure, clearly, there's institutional pressure as well. And organizations are living with this with sort of biased views on the whole thing. And we are sensing in the conversations that we're having a sort of a diversity and inclusion fatigue. Oh, I can't believe we're talking about women again, or leave the LGBT to the side. I don't want to know about neurodiversity. I just came out of COVID. Now I'm entering a war. I don't know how to deal with my business already. And why are you touching upon those topics? And so we wanted to engage in this discussion, and we hope that you can all really bring your views, and we will set up small groups later on for you to also exchange freely in groups of 3. But basically, we have a sense that we need to possibly tackle things slightly differently than the way it's been done in the media, in the social media. And so I would like Amélie to say for us a few words around the notion that every little helps, really.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. Just, yes, keep in mind, in a few minutes, we will give you time to discuss each other about this D&I fatigue. First, we wanted to share some tips that we promote at Leadership CQ when we talk about diversity and inclusion. The first one is keeping in mind a positive attitude. As Vanessa just said, we heard so many times, let's talk again about diversity and inclusion, LGBT, women and men. What we would like to encourage you to keep this positive attitude and explain to people that we don't want a divisive approach. All those radical movements, when we talk about diversity, for example, for Leadership CQ, we really don't want to talk about those radical movements. We also don't want that people feel guilty when we talk about diversity and inclusions. And we know that it happens a lot, Oh, you don't manage LGBT persons, you don't manage disability persons. Do we want to have people feel guilty? No, we really want to avoid that. And to understand it, we need to think about our brain. Diversity and inclusion is a personal journey. It's an individual journey. We will step by step reach this diversity. I guess all of us, we have not been raised with the same diversity. Some of you have been raised with disabled people, with people with different religions, with different social orientations, and some of you don't. So the path, to reach diversity will be very individual, and it's step by step that we're going to reach our goal. We need to remember that our brain, which has been programmed on a survival mode a long time ago, this brain that we call the narrative brain is our main barrier against inclusions. Indeed, this narrative brain makes shortcuts. We like working with people who look like us. Because of this brain, it's difficult for us to work and to interact with people from a really different background. So it's totally natural to think that inclusion sometimes it's difficult. So this is the first element we wanted to insist on, because we are all on the same situations, and step by step, we need to experience this journey.
And rather than look at our differences, because we keep talking about diversity, we need to realize that we're all in the same place. We're all human beings with exactly the same brain functioning, at least the primal one, and the same tendencies. So let's find that in common and be kind with each other by understanding that we're all going to try. And that's why the title of this session was, accidental versus deliberate. We need to be deliberate. But nobody's guilty for being part of a majority. Nobody's guilty for having made a mistake, for having lacked knowledge in certain areas. It's the journey. And yeah.
Yes, thank you. The second thing we wanted to insist on is that, of course, we are all concerned, but we are all responsible as well. And we can do little things. It's why we like the Tesco slogan, little by little, it's going to help. So how could you do, in your day-to-day life, could you become more inclusive? The first thing is to enrich your network with your circle of influence. For example, I just give you an example. If you have a look on your LinkedIn profiles, most of us, we have profiles on our LinkedIn who are really similar to us. We have contact from the same company, from the same school, from the same family environment, etc., etc. So what we would like you to do, and it's what we promote at Leadership CQ, it's to enrich those networks. And how can you do that? For example, at Leadership CQ, we have over the last few months tried to contact some organizations that could help the companies to recruit people with disability, with autism. For example, we just met an organization this week that could help us, for example, to find an intern that could work with us on our project of a diverse app, because we are working with an engineering school at Leadership CQ on this app. We would like also to recruit someone, an intern with autism, for example. So the idea is to enrich your network. And how could you do that? Attending this kind of session today, of course, it's a part of networking as well for you, but you could, for example, meet with a breakout room, some people who have an experience with a specific organization that could be really helpful for your next recruitment, etc., etc. So this was the first.
And I guess here it's just for us to all realize that we each of us has a circle of influence. It could be that it's just about doing something for ourselves, and then indeed our social networks could be a start. We may be working with an ecosystem of companies. So it also has to do with how we deal with them. Are we being inclusive? Are we really implemented psychological safety? Are we, when we hire or when we collaborate, are we looking outside of the usual suspects to try to, so it's pushing the boundaries for ourselves, for our organizations at every level that we can act. And I'm a big advocate of Muhammad Yunus when he says to the youngsters, you need to start small to become big. And he started microcredit in a village, and that was sizable influence at the time, and then it becomes a worldwide movement. So each of us has that responsibility. It's not the D&I person that has it. It's not the HR director who has it. It's every single one of us in our daily challenges, managing our teams and managing the diversity of individuals that we've got. Exactly.
And for example, it's the question we often got from our clients is how completely, in the day-to-day activity, you could start acting with this kind of strategy. What we recommend at Leadership CQ for, specific day-to-day activities, it could be, for example, as we've just said, adding subtitles on the Zoom meeting. Why? Because sometimes in your team, and maybe you don't even know, you've got people with dyslexia. And when you add the subtitles, it really helps them to write and to read the subtitles and to understand some words that could be confusing just orally.
And the same happens with other languages, right? Just
definitely.
adding an aid, a visual aid for communication is making things easier across geographies when it comes to international teams. So.
Yeah, in a meeting as well, when you have a meeting with your team members, we all know that we've got people who are very extrovert. Some of us are really introvert. So we need to deal with all those kind of personality. As a manager, for example, we recommend to give a voice to the person who never talks on your meeting because all the others are only extrovert. Try to give them a voice. Show the example to your team members, and it will really help the others to feel included and to feel listened and to feel respected, because this what means inclusions, you know, it's to feel. We often give the image of diversity is inviting people from different perspectives around the table. Inclusion is giving them a voice around this table, because you could invite everybody, and if you don't give them any way to express what they feel and what they think, they are not including in this kind of case.
And maybe finally, when it comes to this notion of every little helps, everything, every little gesture we make can go a long way. I know there is some frustration from some of us that things are not going fast enough. You know, when you talk to the Ministry of Defense, the perspective of having as many generals women as male is going to take 20 years. Guess what? They can't hire people from the outside. They know it's a long-term vision. And yes, it's going to require a lot of effort, a lot of resilience. Why don't we start celebrating the little victories? Celebrating the unusual successes, celebrating the unusual hires, celebrating people that are bringing that empathy, that safety, that let everybody talk up and speak up in a given meeting. That's really, I guess, for this first section of what can we do and how every little detail counts. It's the positive demeanor. It's your circle of influence and understanding that and acting upon it. And finally, celebrating victories rather than ranting at the fact that we're not yet where we ought to be. And then there's a second section, and that is something that has actually gathered us with Brigitte, John, Amelie, and I, is also the notion that too many people right now are talking about D&I as the end point. D&I is not the end point. It's a means. It's a means for a better society. It's a means for performance. And that's where John and Brigitte come in, because what we talk about is about leadership. It's about innovation. It's about performance. And so Brigitte or John, I don't know, maybe Brigitte a bit on leadership, if you will, or on innovation. Why don't you tell us a few words, and then John can say as well, or vice versa, on this approach, which is really to look at the performance side, and D&I is just the means to get there, as a means to also talk to leaders who might be skeptical about the notion of D&I in a different way.
For sake of diversity, John, why don't you start?
That's a good one, actually. I was going to say ladies first, but of course, I'm a minority, so I get to go first. So yeah, I mean, so Vanessa, tapping into or connecting with what you said, I mean, in the end, you know, we need to create a better world, and that starts, in my view, from innovation. And now everybody goes like innovation, you know, black box. What does it mean? Well, innovation ultimately is only successful when you create value, and that value goes across a few dimensions. Obviously, there needs to be value for your end user, your consumer. Otherwise, you don't have a business. needs to produce value for the company, otherwise your business is not sustainable. But it also needs to be value these days for society. And so many companies, many innovators, fortunately now, are looking to go and partner with others in ecosystems to create a better world. And so if you go and then understand what innovation is and how you get it, you know, it is not happening by itself. It's a human endeavor. I always say, you know, it's a multifunctional team sport. People are working together to create new ideas, not only create new ideas, but also then take them through that long process of qualification or demonstration qualification and finally commercialization to get that into the marketplace for the better of the consumer, the better of the company, the better of the world. Now, how do you do that then? You need to include consumers. Sorry, you need to include, well, ultimately as well, but you need to include your people. And that's exactly the problem. When you look at Gallup, there's a survey, you know, every year to go and look at the engagement of your employees, and they are 30%. Less than 1 out of 3 is engaged in the success of your company. That's a US number. In Europe, it's 16%. It's half. Less than 1 out of 6. The rest is just, you know, bringing the body to work, but not the mind, and they're waiting for 5 o'clock so they can clock out. And so it's absolutely pivotal to go and create that value through innovation, through inclusion. And what we're finding, and that's really what's worrying me, is that, you know, when you look at inclusion and you connect it with diversity, which is what most people still do, D&I, many don't even understand what D&I really stands for. D&I is indeed diversity and inclusion. It's not one and the same thing. If anything, they're opposite ends of the spectrum, right? It is including a diversity. And what worries me so much today is that everybody is back to talking about diversity of all sorts. And they forget the other part, which is so fundamental. It's, if you do not include your diversity, actually your diversity can work against you. Not even neutral, but it can work against you. I always give this silly example that at P&G, when I was the CTO of the site in my last years, we had 32 nationalities. If I wouldn't have worked hard to include that diversity of nationalities, you know, the French would have hired a chef for lunch, the Spanish would have had tapas at 5 o'clock, the Dutch would have a sandwich at desk, you won't see them at lunch. And you would only have generated, pushed out your diversity into different angles. So I'm really worried that diversity with a big diversity and a small inclusion needs to flip towards, or flip back, no, not even flip back, flip towards small diversity, big inclusion. Doesn't mean diversity is unimportant. Absolutely, it's important, but it's only the starting point. And then you need to work. So with that diversity established by going out, and by the way, diversity, men, women, ethnics, education, all those, in the end is diversity of thought, is diversity of thinking. And then you need to go and establish that and take that into inclusion. And the starting point of that really is being curious, being open-minded, want to learn from each other. Don't play it safe and only look for those friends that look like you and talk like you and behave like you, right? I mean, you can learn so much from different cultures, from different people with different backgrounds. And so that is so much more motivating, but it's getting out of your comfort zone and taking that leap of faith and connecting, learning. And I guess, Brigitte, you want to talk a bit about psychological safety as an umbrella or as an enabler to go and create that kind of confidence or that guts to go and take that leap. So anyway, I'm worried about diversity and inclusion needs to truly be diversity and inclusion, and that inclusiveness and the inclusive behavior of leadership that will drive the behaviors and the results that the world needs today.
Thank you, John. Brigitte,
thank you, John. You know, if I kind of go back to what Vanessa, Amélie, and John hinted to is if we want to get away from the fatigue that we have on diversity and inclusion, if you want to go from accidental exclusion to deliberate inclusion, you know, we need to be clear on our intentions. And I think one of the breakthrough thoughts that John has shared is the fact that, and Vanessa, is that you have to define what your intention is for being deliberately inclusive. And in the think tank of includers, we focus on innovation. Our intention is getting having better inclusion, so we get better ideas, so we get better products, so we get a better world. So be very, very clear on the intention of the program or of your own behaviors. And and that's where psychological safety is a very big declaration as a leader. If you're in your organization and you declare your intention that you want to foster an environment that is inclusive, you know, you really need to think of how can you make sure that people feel safe enough to share their ideas, to speak up, to contradict you as a leader, to challenge the status quo. So declaring that intention is really crucial, because that's when you do that declaration in your organization, it makes an enormous difference. Not only do you as a leader start behaving that way, but also people expect you to do that, and they will do the same thing. So I think of this as, you know, when Amélie and Vanessa said start small, you know, that's a great thought also, because starting small is starting by yourself. Okay, so, and think of it as a big stone that you throw in the pond, you know, and you're the stone. The bigger the stone, the stronger you are, you know, the more wave you're going to make in your organization, in your closest circle, and then it's going to be waving out, you know, to your team, to your relationships, your team, your organization, and so on. And psychological safety is really, you know, crucial in that that area. And if you're not deliberate about making that and really, you know, giving that that clear intention to people, that's crucial. Now, in starting small, I would add one tip, because I like, you know, to start small with one thing that I'm going to do, you know, next week to make a difference, and then take on the next one. I think one of the key things John said was curiosity. Cultivate your curiosity for differences and similarities, you know, so, but and get better at it every day, because it's accidental that you don't be you're not curious enough, you know. So it's, your brain is fabulous, you know, it protects you from lots of issues, you know, so it has some automatic mechanism, you know, that tells you, you know, I need to eat now or drink now, so that, you know, I don't get you know, dehydrated. So your brain is fabulous, but sometimes, you know, it doesn't help, you know, it makes some of these shortcuts that may not be the best. And getting better every day at curiosity is going to take really one very important thing, you know. So if you can create psychological safety, if you listen with the right intention. It's okay to have people in the room and to say, I want to listen, and then listen in a way that you prepare yourself to answer or to react. You know, it's really listening to understanding, you know, that is really crucial. And it's, you know, my background in marketing and in listening to the consumer and working on new products, you know, has taught me so much about how listening with the intent to understand makes a huge difference. And that is, again, an intention that is crucial here. And if I want to have that picture in your mind, you know, when Amélie and Vanessa said, people need to feel respected, they need to feel understood. The Indians, when they were, the way they share their knowledge, and it's with a talking stick. You know, so, and a talking stick, we all think that it is, okay, I have the talking stick, so it's my turn, you know, so I give you the talking stick, you continue. The reality of the talking sticks for the Indians was they would only give the stick away once they felt understood. They felt that the other ones in the room, you know, understood their point of view. So keep that in mind. You know, you only feel safe to express your knowledge if you feel that people will understand you and will be there. So that's where psychological safety plays a huge role in this, in being deliberate about it.
Thank you very much, Brigitte.
Yeah.
So we threw at you a few insights, a few reflections. What we would suggest now is to break us in rooms of three, and to have an opportunity to get to know some of the participants and exchange views for 15 minutes on how you feel about that D&I context. Do you feel that there is indeed that fatigue Are there things that you are starting to implement or that you face as challenges? And don't hesitate to, to exchange views and help each other if you've got particular challenges that you're tackling. And we will then debrief in 15 minutes. So I'm starting the rooms now. Before that, do we have any question?
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Patch of ice.
Okay.
So, welcome back, everyone.
This was way too early. You called me. We were in the middle of a conversation. And a good one too. By the way, also, did you put the 3 males on purpose in one group or no? Or was it a coincidence?
This is discrimination. I'm going to file a complaint with the EU Commission.
John, don't discriminate male now.
Yes,
I'm not discriminating. I feel discriminated, whatever, doesn't matter.
We only missed Peter. Peter, you should have joined us, and that was a strike. I know
Next time.
So there was also Jorge. So there's a fifth. So you know that few.
And Albert.
You will discover that you're actually
I was
many
in
more
disguise.
So anybody wants to give a bit of a nutshell of the exchanges you had? I was in a group where rather than talking about fatigue, there was the sense that there was a resistance towards the notion of getting more diversity or getting more inclusion. And that was the bigger issue rather than we're tired of it, is like, it's not going to happen because people are too resistant to it. So that came from one of the groups. Other thoughts?
We had one in the group that was interesting, and we didn't think there was fatigue with getting results of diversity. Okay? But maybe with the words, there was definitely fatigue with Me Too at one point in time. But when you really look at the reality, most of us have worked in companies where at one point in time you had affirmative actions coming in, and lots of other things, so it was maybe the words D&I was, something that you have fatigue on, but not, the fact of working on it and getting results from it.
Very nice.
Is that, Marie and Jetta were with my team. Do you want to add something on that?
No, that's you summarized it perfectly. Yeah.
Fine for me too.
we had a bit of discussion on. It's a bit similar to what you said, but on the fact that I have the feeling that I always talk to people who are convinced already that diversity is good, positive, and we should do it. I mean, if you look around the 20-something of us, I think we're all more or less on the same line. So I would like to talk to somebody who's maybe not against, but at least indifferent, and then try to convince them. For me, it's more interesting than talking always to the same people who already are on the same side. And this is for me, and for well, that's my work too. But in the European Commission, it's a bit difficult. We have a group of believers, and the others, it's hard to reach them.
And that's the big danger, right? That we start talking to ourselves. Absolutely. And there's a bunch of D&I experts that get together, but there's a point where indeed, if you have a bunch of, it's like in activism, if you have activists on one side only talking to each other, they don't realize they don't have an impact on society. Does anybody in the other groups and amongst the 20 of you have experiences of people who are rather reluctant? We do, huh? We have to face organizations that need to do it because they have the pressure of society behind them, but you feel that some leaders are really not keen on doing it at all. And they have very, the last one that came to me was an interview that I was trying to make with a CEO. And he told his team, "Oh, another vegan bitch." Because and they were open enough to tell me afterwards that conversation had taken place, and it ended up being a very good conversation because we actually hit it off and we had a great exchange. But the bias of of that person thinking about anybody who would talk about D&I was a sort of very, very limited view of the type of personality or the type of individual.
It was an interpretation. Vanessa, it was an interpretation, you know, and we tried at leadership to encourage you to observe first, you know, it's a new environment, observe first and then interpret. And this person he thought we were talking about diversity and inclusion, we were vegan, you know, and we're not. So,
but
yeah.
It's back to your point, the point you raised earlier, Vanessa, which is people don't see the why. They think it's an end in its own right, and it's not. It's a means towards a better world.
Yeah.
Or should be.
I think the why can be explained, going back to what you said, John. The level of engagement of the workforce is very low. The only way to increase it and to avoid the resignation en masse, which is taking place in some companies, is to offer purpose at work to people. And diversity and inclusion is a way to improve the level of engagement and also to offer purpose of people in their work.
Absolutely. I would totally agree to that. And the more we will set up means to try to quantify progress in the comfort that people are feeling at work, because they feel that their voices are being heard, because they feel that they are not discriminated against, because they feel that they're not fearful. Those are things that rather than say, do you think your company is diverse enough, like some questionnaires that we've seen float around, we need to have ways of quantifying and assessing the state of inclusion of companies. And that goes with definitely, and show them the correlations with job satisfaction, remaining and loyalty to the positions and to the company, because it costs a bomb to hire new people. So I agree with you, Alan.
Vanessa, I'd like to add something to this discussion, and coming back to Mathieu's question on, you know, when you, I have on how do you face detractors, you know, and how, you know, I faced a lot of them because I've been given, you know, bias and inclusion trainings to quite a few management committees, and, you know, that were resistors to the program. There are two things that really help. One is I usually get them to fill in, you know, to put little crosses against, you know, their personal characteristics, you know, tall, blonde, whatever, you know, Caucasian, introvert, you know, so to go through a whole list, you know, of things, all of the elements that you could imagine of diversity, and then get them to identify, you know, where they got an advantage out of it or a negative, where they discriminated positively or negatively, you know, if it's one of these, you know, and that brings it to them personally, and they go like, by the way, I've been discriminated because of my age and because I was German and I was working in a French company. Suddenly, you know, it takes a personal, you know, zen to it. And, you know, when you get them to realize that they themselves have lived through some of these experiences, that makes a really big difference. The other one is where you were coming at, you know, which is the survey ID, you know, so one of the key questions that shows you whether people feel they're included is, you know, am I being used to the best of my abilities in this company? Okay, so that's one that really helps, because that goes beyond, you know, the, you know, am I included or discriminated? That's difficult to answer, but am I being used to the best of my abilities? You know, can I in this environment, you know, safely speak up, you know, are things that can help.
I'd like to, since we need to wrap up now, I'd like to jump on Mathieu's comment and send a challenge out there for next session. Why don't we identify people who are resistant and who actually, I wouldn't say disagree with diversity, because we might not find those too much, but people who do not see the interest for their companies in bringing more diversity, or find that the barriers are overwhelming. And why don't we bring them and have an open debate with them in a next exchange? We need to find them. I know a few, and we might be able to convince them to join in. What would you think of that?
It's a brilliant idea, and I think if to get them to join a session like this, we'll need to declare the intention that we're going to listen to understand.
Yeah.
We want to really understand, listen to understand, and not, try to convince them.
Exactly.
No, it's listening. Yeah.
It's listening that's going to be crucial for us.
Well, on this note, so we will reiterate the adventure, and we will send you a date, and I think that will be definitely it. The next session will be let's listen to the two sides of the story, and let's see what comes out of it. Thank you so much, everyone. It was lovely to have you and see you. And I wish you an excellent week. We wish you an excellent week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.